Hello and welcome, Exiles, to the first build of the 10 Divine Challenge I'm doing for Necropolis League, which is a Wintertide Elementalist. Now, for a few reasons I wanted to do this character. Number one is I think Wintertide's actually a pretty strong skill and stronger than people give it credit for, so I wanted to try out, see how it could perform. And number two is I had some interest in trying out golems as in terms of like the Elementalist, using the golem portion of the Ascendancy and see what strong things were there, and tried this combination together to see what I could come up with. Now, what we have here, I spent about 1.5 divines per Darkseer. My idea behind this was Darkseer will give +2 all, which will benefit my main skill, the spell I'm using, which is Wintertide, wherever I have that. And then it will also level up my golems, helping me hit a break point for getting a bit more golem effect. You'll see the difference in a level 21 versus a level 27 stone golem is 110 regen base versus 145. So as you jump up those levels, you get more and more out of the benefit. Now I'm going to resummon that stone golem before I forget, because otherwise it's going to be not on the floor when I need it for the showcase. But anyways, so the idea was I'd get +2 generic levels, which applies to my main skill and my golems, and then it would also apply to whatever auras I'm wearing as well. So I thought there'd be a decent amount of synergy there. And it gives you some ES or some life. Granted, the most ideal set of these would be life plus ES, but those were quite a bit more expensive, so I got just cheaper +2 ES, +1 life, or +1 mana. Basically just what I could find on the market that was actually listed lower, because if I bought the more expensive ones, they're closer to 4 divines, and that would just blow my budget entirely. Outside that, I spent about a divine linking up a 2-socket duration Ghost Wraith. I think this cost us like 50C or something. It was cheap, and then we spent most of our currency on this doing the Tainted Fusings and Tainted Jewelers just to give us a +2 there. And outside of all that, we also did a replica Dragon Fangs. I think this amulet is a huge amulet when it comes to making budget characters, and this is something I'd strongly recommend if you're making whatever non-meta, off-meta build you're making. Look up this amulet. If you're doing a spell build, it's almost always close to best in slot, and you can buy it for pennies on the dollar. We bought this for 20C. It had high LRS, high reservation, high plus levels, and it just works, and it's good for pretty much any spell build you do. I would highly recommend checking this out depending on what character you're making. Could be a best in slot for you, and it could be really cheap, because if it's not meta, there are a lot more amulets on the market than there are buyers, or there are a lot more sellers than there are buyers, which means it's kind of a buyer's market and you get it for pennies on the dollar. Outside that, we also included the Rhyme Gaze, another cheap unique helmet that comes with 50 dot multi just to help us get our single target up. We don't have a lot of sources of dot multi. Granted, we're using Darkseers here, so normally a big source of your dot multi would be a weapon with dot multi. We don't have that, so this helps cover that a bit. I will say this, ultimately, a higher end investment of the character, cold dot build. A Rare Scepter is going to be stronger, but getting a good Rare Scepter is very expensive. So Darkseer for 1.5 divines felt like a pretty decent purchase to make. Outside that, I'm running a Doagers with the Corruption. This was a 20C, 30C buy, and it gave 30 all res and +1 curse, which I felt like for an elemental dot build, that's pretty good. Having a +1 curse is massive, whether you're playing cold dot, fire dot, because you really want to get that damage or that via subtracting enemies res, and this helps you do it for not too much. Outside that, we used Tides of Time, and we didn't just use Tides of Time, I also used a Balbala. Don't make fun of me. This should be enough sustain where if I do the reuse flask, I have permanent uptime on these flasks. This is one of those things where I like the solution to solve res in terms of like cost when it comes to Balbala. Balbala lets you do it if you go down to 3 flasks, or if you have Tides of Time plus Balbala, you get some flask effect, and you can use 4 flasks at that point, and thus we can still have some good uptime on this Quicksilver we have. Now, that is the idea in terms of solving our res. Outside that, we have a bit of chaos res here and there on our gloves and our boots. We basically just bought some cheap fractures and then threw a couple of shrieking or screaming essences at it until we hit some okay mods, and then called it a day. That is the TLDR on our budget. Ultimately, when you're shopping on 10 divines, the budget gets really limited really fast. I also had to fill in some jewels, which I got some primordial eminences. I did 3 of these for 90 golem buff effect, and we did 1 anima stone, so we got +1 golem there. I'm not convinced this is necessarily the correct play. Where did I put my anima stone? I guess I put it over here. I'm not convinced this is worth the 4 jewel sockets. Rares or Adorn would probably be better, but that stuff's just more expensive, and thus we went for this. It was a cheap option. Anima stone was like 9C. Primordial elements is like 7C each. Cheap option, just worked out. Decent golem effect, and then a +1 golem on top of that, which gives us more golem effect from Elementalists. Outside of that, all that, we also went for Primordial Bond here with minion clusters and the minion damage wheel. The idea here was with 7 golems in the field, this node gives 70% damage. So these 3 nodes, between them 3, I'm getting 90% damage, 90% damage. And then we have the minion damage here and the minion damage here. It felt like a decent setup for our initial scaling. Outside that, I did 3 brand clusters going for remarkables plus brand loyalty. And then I have 1 remarkable plus chip away, which I don't even have brand recall in the character right now. I probably should have it. I didn't really think it all the way through. Brand recall would probably be very good for quality life of mapping, but I just didn't think about including it, which I probably should have. Anyways, that's besides the point. All in all, this I made just by Scour and Alkene. Brand clusters seemed pretty easy to roll. We rolled all 3 of these within about, I think, 90, 80 Scour and Alks between, and I was using Binding Orbs because they were cheaper than Alks, so that was just another money save right there. And then I also, in my Battle Jewel, went for at least 1 notable with Onslaught, and we have that, and we have some movement speed, and we have a little bit of minion damage down here. So, that is the character. We are level 94. We are doing a decent amount of auras between Haste, Hatred, Malevolence. Malevolence we have on our life pool. And then we have Clarity plus Discipline for a bit more ES, and that's our auras. We get decent reservation efficiency between these nodes here, and then the Mastery here. And between that Mastery and these mana nodes, we solve our mana with a low level Clarity, and that is the setup. Now, I want to talk about something very, very powerful, or at least I think is very powerful, very impressive, that I don't think is really gotten much attention, and that is the Stone Golem of Safeguarding. If you look up at my Golem buff effects, you'll notice the Stone Golem right here has a number next to it which says 94%. We have a lot of Golem effect, and this is coming from this little Golem right over here, wherever I can follow him. Stone Golem of Safehoarding. Golem grants 15% melee damage taken from Stone Golem's life before yours. Now, I have a lot of buff effect on my character between all of my golems and having an elementalist node right here. We get 100% buff effect here. We get 175% effect here because we have 7 golems, so 7 times 25. We get another 40 golem effect from both primordial bonds here and here, so that's 80 total. Then we get another 40 here and another 20 and 20 here. So, point is, we have a lot of, and then we have the golem effect from our primordial eminences. Point is, this stone golem actually has a ridiculous amount of damage buffer. If we get hit by melee, we're only taking 6% of the melee, and then it goes to this guy. Now, eventually, the golems will die. I tested this character on Ubers. We did 6 out of 7. The only one I failed was Awakener, which I basically had in cull range. I choked that fight really hard. I got him down to about 15% HP, and then I lost 4 portals in a row. It was very, very poorly played. But the point is, this golem actually is insanely powerful for tanking things like a Shaper Slam, like the Minotaur Slam. There are multiple times during the Exarch fight where I'm like, how did I not die there? And it didn't really occur to me that I was getting saved by this golem, because there was multiple times where I had gotten hit by one of the Exarch balls. All my ES was down low. I had barely any left. And then I got hit by a Minotaur doing his big slam, and that's a very decently sized fizz hit, and I didn't die. And during the fight, I just thought, oh, maybe I blocked it. But realistically, I know now that I didn't get saved that many times that coincidentally. It was this guy saving me. I didn't really even realize that it would display the amount of number up here. I just realized this before recording this video, and it occurs to me that's probably what was saving me, and that's actually just kind of insane to think about. 94% damage gets converted or gets translated over to my golem instead of me is a little bit wild to think about. Now, as for why did we choose Winter Brand and why do I think the skill is pretty good? Well, there's a few reasons. Don't look at my support gems too hard. I think there's some things I could probably do to optimize this. For example, Bone Chill maybe would have been better on a Skitterbot. This is something that somebody recommended to me, but at the time I had already planned all of my sockets. I didn't want to switch everything around, but Bone Chill on an Unbound Ailment Skitterbots maybe could have made sense in order to get Elemental Focus on the main skill. Probably would have been higher damage, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, besides the point, Wintertide. This skill, why do I think this is quite strong? Now, number one is in POB, it isn't correctly set up to calculate damage. This thing can apply a debuff from three different brands, and they all apply based on however many stages they have. In POB, if you plug Wintertide Brand in, it only does 1. And then on top of that, it's not just 3, because you can attach up to 3 brands. You get 1 additional brand attached with Wintertide at baseline, and then you get 1 additional from Runebinder that allows you to attach 3 brands to an enemy. There is also the scenario when it reaches its max stages, it does a burst thing that puts some degen on the ground, and that is technically a 4th brand's worth of damage that can be there. Ultimately, It's a skill that really wants a decent amount of cast speed to ramp those stages. The way it works is it ramps up to 20 stages. It has a duration, and the faster you get to those stages, the faster it deals damage. Kind of like how Penance Brand works, where you want a lot of cast speed to make that damage just ramp faster and faster. That's the sort of idea. But anyways, the way it works is 577 base damage times 3, because you get 3 brands, and technically it could be times 4 if you count the extra one on the floor, which sometimes is there, sometimes isn't, just depends. And then you get up to 20 stages, which all give 25% more damage per stage. So what ends up happening is you have 577, and then you get times roughly 20 times 25 is 500% more damage. So you multiply that number by 6. So it's about 3k something base damage times 3 or times 4-ish, depending on if the thing's on the ground. So that's the way this damage works out. It's a little bit convoluted. I don't think it's registered in PUB correctly, because when I put it into PUB and I upped the count, that didn't increase the damage. When I changed around a few configures, it didn't change the damage. So I'm assuming that PUB is just not counting the fact that you get 3 brands on an enemy. And you do. So if you ever plug it into PUB and you're thinking, wow, the damage is low, it's probably not calculating it correctly, and you probably need to do some funny stuff to make it calculate correctly. Now I will go ahead and do a Phoenix here as a little showcase of what the character looks like while mapping, and we will go from there. It's not insanely OP damage, but it was enough, and enough tankiness for me to do 6 out of 7 Ubers. Granted, I will say this, it was one of the luckiest fights I've ever had in terms of doing hold on, I just realized I have the dialogue option all the way up. Hold on, let me turn that down. I have the dialogue at like max. I'm gonna turn that down just because, okay, here's what happens. Shaper's dialogue's kind of quiet, and I always like hearing Shaper's dialogue, so I turn it up whenever I do Shaper's fight. And then so I turned it up when I did Shaper's, and then I just had it on for the other fights too, because I like the boss dialogue in PoE. I think it's fun to listen to. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm enjoying it, at least. But anyways, this skill, it basically... I just remember something I forgot. This is something I respec during the fight on Ubers I was doing, and I think technically I want to have... Oh, I didn't even respec the right node. Okay, never mind, we're fine. There was something else that I messed up. During the fight, I was thinking about respecing a node for the reattach every 0.3 seconds, but I think I spec'd it back, so I fixed it. Never mind. Anyways, point is, the skill, look, this is what the skill looks like while clearing. I have the Celestial MTX, which I think looks pretty cool, but in case you don't have the Celestial MTX, I'll showcase it without it, just to give the contrast there of what the skill looks like with and without the Celestial MTX. Looks a little bit more frosty, a little bit less celestial, but I still think it's a pretty cool little skill. And it is actually a very good, I believe, leveling skill. Like, people do it through the campaign, have a decent amount of fun with it. Life regen, fire explode, adaptive resistances. What is adaptive resistances? Adaptive resistances? I don't know if I've seen that mod before. Is that like a new version of like cycling damage reduction? Is that what that is? I know they changed cycling damage reduction out. I don't remember seeing adaptive resistances before, so I wonder if that's like the thing they swapped to calling it or something. I don't know. For the most part, you're just jumping around, you're putting brands down, and then if you get a tanky enemy like a boss or a rare that has much extra res and isn't dying, then you do double curse, frost bomb, hold skull drive, frost bomb on my spacebar, and then if you're doing something where you need a tank phase, then that's what frost shield is for. But ultimately, if we were mapping realistically, if I wanted to make this playthrough look smoother, I would probably swap frost shield only for bosses, and I would use brand recall here. It would probably just be better, but that's besides the point. Anyways, go ahead and look what this looks like doing a boss, if we will. This is a Phoenix. Phoenix has about 30 million HP. I think I should be far enough away from this. And we're killing him in roughly, I don't know what that is, 10 seconds. So we're maybe around 3-ish million DPS, somewhere around there. You can check the footage to see how long it actually was. I wasn't really counting. I guess technically I have this clock thing I could have looked at, but I always forget it's there. Anyways, this is the Wintertide 10D Elementalist. This is the setup I went for. I think it worked pretty solid for the price, and then I think it would be a lot smoother while mapping if I did the brand recall setup, which right now, let me just actually do that real quick just to try to showcase the difference, because I was basically, I was pretty much just recasting every single pack I went to, and I believe if you have brand recall, I believe you can kind of just pop it whenever you go through a pack until your brand finally runs out, and it just kind of works a lot better. So let me just test that out real quick here. I'll just put brand recall in my spacebar, and I'm not going to use frostbomb for now. I just want to see what it looks like in Blood Aqueducts, just to get the feel for it, for how often you get to just press it. I wasn't really thinking about it. I'm gonna put this over here just so I can see the cooldown when I press it. Okay, that's what it looks like. So if I was just using brand recall, what would that look like? They build up stages, right? They do more stages as you go. I mean, it saves you a decent amount of time, I guess, between doing the... like, not having to recast it, but I don't know if it saves you like a ton of time. No, it saves a decent amount. Okay, that would probably be a lot smoother while mapping, I think. I just completely forgot about brand recall. I literally rolled the jewel, I hit chip away, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool node. Gives me brand attachment range, gives me some CDR, my brand recall. And then I honestly just completely forgot about this as a thing to use. I'd probably say use this while mapping, and then use this while bossing if you're like doing some really hard boss like Ubers. If you want to see the full VODs of the Ubers I did, they were all on yesterday's Twitch VOD, and it was at the very end. We did 6 out of 7. Exarch, I had a miracle run. I've never done Exarch where I don't die to my minions, but somehow I was able to do ball phases multiple times successfully with these golems. I don't know how it happened. I think I got lucky. I'm not sure. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Until next one, we're going to do more 10D builds. But before we continue the 10D builds, I am going to be doing the event in LA on June 6th. And I'm going to try to record as much footage and make some videos on PoE 2 with the console playtest. We'll see how that goes. So anyways, that's what you can expect from me in the next weeks coming. All right, I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Have a good one.